It's time for Fully Threaded Radio.
It is Fully Threaded Radio, voice of the FCH Sourcing Network. This is the show that discusses all things related to the industrial threaded fastener industry, and although we're occasionally diverted onto subjects that are only marginally fastener related, if you dig fasteners, this is the internet radio show for you. Hi everyone, Eric Dudas here, and I'm joined by the code-slinging co-host of Fully Threaded, a man who's never questioned that fasteners are the most noble of all the industrial supply commodities, Mr. Brian Musker. You're back on the hot seat, my friend.
Hey, mate, after last week in Chicago with temperatures that get down to freezing, I'm not sure how hot the seat is, but I'm over my jet lag and back into fasteners again. It's good to be back.
Well, it's good to have you. And thanks for clicking in, everybody. This is episode 24. And we'll be uploading this to the Fully Threaded Radio site on April 25th, 2011.
Yeah, so now what do we got on the schedule for today?
Glad you asked. During today's feature segments, we'll be speaking to Metric and Multistandard Reno branch manager, John Gaudette. John is the current vice president of the Pacific West Fastener Association, and he's got information about the second annual Mel Kirshner Memorial Golf Tournament. That's coming up in just a couple of weeks. We'll also hear his thoughts on the recent PacWest Spring meeting and business in general. Next, Jim Derry will join us. As of very recently, Jim can include himself among the elite group of former NFDA presidents, and he reflects on his year at the helm of the NFDA during this segment. Will he drift quietly onto the golf course during his post-presidential tenure? You'll hear what he has planned for himself and Field Fasteners during the conversation. We also have a conversation with BB&T Capital Markets analyst Holden Lewis on the show today. He's got some reactions to first quarter results and also some very useful advice for distributors in light of current conditions. To get things all started, we have the Fastener News Report presented by Fastener Technology International magazine editor, Mr. Mike McNulty. He's got a pretty hard-hitting editorial today also, and you're not going to want to miss it. So what do you think, Bri? Ready to jump into all that?
Yeah. Sounds like a pretty good lineup. So there's going to be a lot of talk of golf on today's show. Does that make golf the theme of today's show?
Actually, no, although that would have been appropriate, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
I was actually thinking a lot about this whole debt ceiling issue lately and the whole clock ticking closer to a showdown, or possible default, or who knows what might be happening. It's hard to believe what's all going down, and it's happening all over the place. I mean, for example, just this last week, Standard & Poor's downgraded the outlook for treasuries. So golf would have been a heck of a lot easier.
Yes, well, as you know very well, my golf game's a disaster, though I guess that's a problem of a really much smaller magnitude relative to our debt ceiling. Though, to my mind, it's a very large problem.
Well, we'll get back to that. And before we get too far into things, and on the subject of golf still, we'll be hearing about the second annual Mel Kirshner Golf Tournament on May 6th, as we mentioned. But the Midwest Fastener Association is also having a golf event, and that's the 59th annual golf outing. And that's taking place on June 6th over at Crest Creek Country Club in Naperville, Illinois. You can get details for that at their website. That's www.mwfa.net.
Yes, well, that's going to be good. Now, you know better than anyone, there's some really interesting FCH history related to the Crest Creek Golf Course.
Yes, that's true. Good old Royal St. George Drive, huh?
Right. You could actually say that some of what we know as FCH was sort of discussed in long evenings sitting on a balcony overlooking the golf course.
That's right. Right on the First Lady's Tee is where we actually came up with the idea for FastenersClearinghouse.com, and that was, 8-9 years ago now, right?
Yeah, it's very, very appropriate that they'll be having the Midwest Fastener Association will be using that golf course. Yeah, there were many evenings spent looking out at and watching people walking back after their day's golf there.
That's right. Maybe someday, who knows, we'll have a little story on Finn dedicated to that, on their history page.
Right.
Wouldn't that be great?
Yeah, we might be the only ones who knew what was going on there.
Hey, folks, we are the people who bring you FastenersClearinghouse.com and the FCH Sourcing Network. I hope your team and yourself, you're all using it when the need comes up, when you need to find a hard-to-locate fastener inventory item, or you're looking to make a spot buy, or on the other side of the coin, if you're looking to move some inventory. We'd be happy to help you out there. Get out to www.FastenersClearinghouse.com. Jump into the network. A lot of things are going on, and we've got some very exciting developments. Hopefully, in the near future, we'll be making some announcements on that. But the network is really cranking along these days, so take a look at the FCH Sourcing Network.
And just remember also that you don't only have to have what you consider to be surplus or slow-moving to list it with Fasteners Clearinghouse. Just remember that when someone goes into Google and looks for a special type of fastener, they do not necessarily type surplus in front of it. So people find Fasteners Clearinghouse searching for all sorts of different fasteners. If you have them in your inventory, you might as well list them on FCH.
Absolutely true. A lot of business comes to us that way, just people looking for things through the magic of Google, Bing, Yahoo, and so forth. So throw a few more logs on the fire and get on FCH.
Yeah.
Also, feel free to communicate with us anytime. We're always happy to hear from you. You can do so at the email address ftr@fullythreaded.com. Check out our Twitter posts occasionally, which come out, and you can see them under the handle Fully Threaded. And our other venture into the social networking arena these days is Facebook, and I hope you'll take a look at our Facebook page and check out some of the links that we put up there that relate to the show. We've been a little bit better about that for the last couple of shows, and it's a treasure trove of information. Get out there, folks.
Speaking of people communicating with us, we actually got a couple of really interesting emails in as a result of the last episode we put out, and this related to the reshoring initiative, and there were a number of comments about how very appropriate that was, and hopefully we'd like to, since we believe in it also, I mean, this is a great way of helping America, hopefully we can get a couple of fastener companies that are actually manufacturers within the US that we can interview for an upcoming episode.
Yeah, it was really well received, and I hope we can do that. We're going to keep our eyes open for that. Hey, did you see this? Over at FastenerJournal.com on the Fastener News Now page, back on 4/18, there was a release, the National Industrial Fastener and Mill Supply Expo, which used to be NIFS. That's happening in October. They've got the NFDA now holding their fall meeting on, I guess, the first day of the show. So it's actually October 19th, but basically the NFDA is piggybacking on top of the Vegas show.
Well, it sort of makes a bit of sense, actually. I mean, since, so many of the people who are in the FDA will be at that show.
Yeah. From that perspective, it makes a lot of sense, too. I was actually kind of glad to hear that.
And I'm sure there's a lot of pretty good golf courses around Las Vegas.
All right, it can be the theme.
It could be. Okay, so how do you pronounce the acronym for the National Industrial Fastener Mill Supply Expo?
Well, I know. I was thinking about that, too. I know it was so easy before. NIFS, I mean, I've got it etched in my brain. Now we've got NIFMSE. What is that? NIFMSE?
NIFMSE. Okay, and what do we have to put the NFDA on the end of it for those people? The NIFMSE and NIFTA?
I don't know. This part, this is a development I don't know if I support.
Right, we'll leave that one, I think.
Well, we'll do the best we can, or we'll just call it the Vegas show,
Yeah, I know. Yeah, which is what we normally do anyway.
But the show out in Vegas is happening October 19th through the 21st, and we'll be out there. And I hope at that time the economy is surging along somehow, and we dodge any fiscal bullets that might be coming our way.
Well, you're sort of really fixated on this deficit spending issue, aren't you?
Well, I guess I am. And I think when it really lodged in my mind, actually a couple of weeks ago I was reading a column by Joseph Farah, and there was a way of thinking about the size of $1 trillion that really it staggered me. And it goes like this. If you took the number of seconds in a day and you did the math, you would find out that 1 million seconds comes out to 12 days. If you came out with 1 billion seconds, that would come out to roughly 32 years. $1 trillion. Here's where it gets really, really nauseating. 32,000 years. And, to think that we're 1.6 trillion over in just the budget for 2011, and we're arguing about shaving off a mere 38 billion.
Yeah, I know. It's so stupid.
Well, it's one of these things that's happening on such a huge scale that it's hard to get your arms around it, really. And when I saw that Farah column and he put it like that, and these numbers are a little rough, I actually went back and I did the math, and they approximate. But the clock ticking is I don't know. I guess I feel it all the time now. So I don't know. Don't want to bring everybody down, but hey, it's definitely something worth discussing. And also, just ahead of the Fastener news report, there's one item that hit the news just after we recorded the segments with Mike McNulty and Holden Lewis, and that is that Fastenal announced a 2-for-1 stock split on April 19th. So, offsetting some of the gloom and doom, it's quite true that many businesses are operating in high gear right now, and we're going to hear about some of that optimism during today's show. So, that'll offset it all, huh, Bri?
Yeah. Now, you see, that's one reason people love Internet Fastener Talk Radio. We always have a way of focusing on the positive things.
Well, we try to. And I know someone who focuses on the fastener industry.
Yeah, and that's Mike McNulty.
You are correct, sir. Here's the Fastener News Report.
Okay.
Thanks, Eric, and greetings to all the fully threaded radio listeners out there. This is Mike McNulty with the Fastener News Report, brought to you by Fastener Technology International, your print and digital magazine for the whole fastener industry. Well, Eric, in the last episode, I made a joke about the Cleveland Indians visiting last place already this year. But since then, they've raced up into first place in the American League Central, and they're currently on pace to win over 110 games this season. But until that happens, I'm going to stay focused on the fastener industry. Our lead story today is titled, Don't Mess with the Illini. The Rockford Register-Star reports that Field Fastener Supply broke ground on a $3.5 million expansion, which was aided by a $1.1 million from the state of Illinois in tax credits and job training funds. Field is adding 44,000 square feet of space and 15 to 20 new jobs to its existing staff of 55. Field had considered moving its operations to Texas before striking the $1 million deal with the state. Stephen Koina, Chief of Staff for the Illinois Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity, said that Illinois values its business leaders and that it wants to keep jobs in the state. He cited several recent competitions with Texas over different Illinois businesses, and he reported that the Illini has consistently been able to convince companies to stay put in the Prairie State. The expansion, which will incorporate lots of lean concepts, will include new loading docks, a quality lab, a workout room, and a great room for employees complete with a fireplace, big screen TVs, and video games to enjoy during breaks. Field's General Manager Jim Derry talks with Eric later on in the program. Now let's move on to our Fastener Newsmaker highlights. Gary Sullo, president of Tramec LLC in Kansas, reports that his company bought Hill Fastener Corporation of Rock Falls. Rock Falls is owned by Robert Hill, the company's CEO, and the deal positions Hill Fastener's brand as part of the Tramec Fastener business under the new name Tramec Hill Fastener LLC. All Hill employees will be retained and the business will remain in the community where Robert Hill's father started it in 1957. Rotor Clip in Somerset, New Jersey has completed 3 personnel changes in its sales and marketing department. Sarah Mallow has been appointed VP of Sales. Joe Capello has been appointed Director of Global Marketing, and Jurgen Wenzel has been appointed Manager Marketing Communications. Rotorclip makes retaining rings and wave springs, and it has operations in the USA, the UK, and Germany. Annixter recently locked up a new revolving credit agreement worth $400 million, which matures in the year 2016. Alcoa announced good financial results for the fourth quarter of 2010, and it expects 12% increased demand for its products this year. Its engineered products division, which includes fasteners for aerospace and industrial applications, set a record for earnings margins for the last quarter of 2010. The Lake Zurich Courier reports that Termax Corporation is annexing 5 acres of land adjacent to its Illinois operation to expand its building by 37,000 square feet, and it will add 50 new jobs. The company supplies metal and plastic fastener solutions to the automotive industry. Our final newsmaker highlight this episode is that the Scottish Football League reports that it has a team sponsor that is heavily involved in the fastener industry. Fastech in the UK supplies fasteners to the automotive, engineering, military, and aerospace industries, and it has just extended its sponsorship agreement with the Livingston Football Club, the current second division champion. All right, Eric, next up is our Fastener Events on the Horizon report. The National Industrial Fastener and Mill Supply Expo East takes place next week in Columbus, Ohio on April 27th. 56 exhibitors are scheduled this year, and overall attendance should be in the neighborhood of 300 or 400 fastener people based on past results. I will be there working out of booth 115 along with Tom Hutchinson, the VP of Sales for Fastener Technology. The night before the show opens, we'll be across the street from the convention center at the Flatiron Bar and Diner looking for some beer and food. Bossard North America will be presenting an open house in Cedar Falls, Iowa on May 17th called Breakthroughs in Fastener Technology. Look for details at bossard.com. Also coming up next month are the All-American Fastener Show in Branson, Missouri on May 12th and 13th, and the North Coast Fastener Association Distributors Social in Independence, Ohio on May 19th. Good fastener industry participation is expected at both events. All right, finally, let's turn to the back page of this report where I present a personal interest story and some editorial comments. The subject this week is government spending and debt. Recently, I had a couple readers of Fastener Technology International magazine ask me why sometimes I write about politics and the U.S. government on the editorial page of the Fastener magazine. My answer is simple. Government intervention and activity have an impact on all industries, including the fastener industry. Spending and the accumulation of debt put immense pressures on individuals and private enterprises, which drive the U.S. economy. As the general economy heats up or cools off, fastener manufacturing, distribution, and use all follow along for the ride. In my 15 years of staying focused on the fastener industry, I've never seen the direction of government more threatening than it is now. Consider this. In the last 10 years, USA population grew by just 10%, and federal tax receipts were only up 8%, but government spending increased by 93% in the same time period. Our highest federal deficit level, which is calculated as tax receipts minus government spending, between the years of 1900 and 2001 was $290 billion in 1992. Our average deficit from the year 2002 to 2008 was $300 billion per year. But that is nothing compared to the last 2 years. In 2009 and 10, we recorded deficits of $1.4 and $1.3 trillion, tripling the old record of $450 billion set in 2008. It doesn't matter if you're a Democrat or Republican, liberal or conservative, you have to see that something is really wrong. If you don't, then you should know that it just gets worse this year. While 2011 tax receipts are estimated to rise just 1% over the 2010 levels, government spending will go up by more than 10%, and we will once again set new spending and deficit records. In fact, the 2011 spending level will be more than twice as high as it was in the year 2000. So here's what I would like to know. What are we getting for this flood of spending and a mountain of debt? How is the federal government serving us better than it did 10 years ago? Does anyone think that Washington, D.C. is serious about cutting spending when it fights over phantom spending cuts of $38 billion? Here's my spending plan in just 3 sentences. We should set government spending to the 2000 level plus 10%, right at $2 trillion. Next, we should end the class warfare nonsense arguments by making everyone, individuals and companies, pay the same tax rate of about 12% on their earnings, with no loopholes, deductions, or exemptions. Finally, the government would be allowed to spend the amount of money equal to what it brought in from the prior year and nothing more. If this plan were adopted, it would force a lot of lobbyists, tax consultants, and political experts to look for real jobs, and it would free up cash for more fasteners. This has been Mike McNulty of Fastener Technology International bringing you the Fastener News Report. Visit FastenerTech.com to learn more about the fastener industry and send your news, comments, corrections, or complaints to me at McNulty@FastenerTech.com.
It's fully threaded. Stay with us.
FastenersClearinghouse.com. Search and source from over 500,000 line items, all just a mouse click away and available at no charge. When the need arises, you won't find a better place to locate hard-to-find fastener inventory. It's where you need to be.
This is Joe Truckee of Cal Fasteners, and Fasteners Clearinghouse works for us.
This is Robert Wanzer, and Fasteners Clearinghouse works for American Imperial.
This is Andy Pell from ScrewCrew.com, and FCH works for the fastener industry.
Join the sourcing network now and show your inventory to a whole new market. Turn slow movers into cash. List up to 10,000 line items. Show them to distributors only or to the world. FastenersClearinghouse.com. It's where you need to be.
Hello, this is Tom from Industrial Depot, Astro Bolt and Nut in Gainesville, Georgia, and you're listening to Fully Threaded Radio.
We're a couple of weeks into the second quarter, and joining us now to see how things wrapped up in quarter one, we're joined by Holden Lewis, industry analyst with BB&T Capital Markets. Holden focuses on manufacturing and distribution, and he joins us now from Richmond, Virginia. Thank you for joining us again, Holden.
As always, thanks for having me, Eric.
We've seen some really upbeat reports with quarter one results coming in during the past week. I'm sure you have lots to say on that subject.
Well, we'll certainly have more come the end of April, but we have seen, as you said, a smattering of pretty good reports, including in some of the distribution space. And at this point, you have to say that the conclusion is that demand and business in the industrial world remains very strong. The companies that we've already seen report, it's pretty consistent what the revenue growth is looking like here. Fastenal, they reported their earnings of not too long ago, and they had revenues up about 21% on a daily sales basis. MSC reported earnings; they had revenues up 22%. Motion Industries reported their earnings, and they had revenues up 25%. And just yesterday, we heard from Kennametal, who reported that their revenues or their orders were up about 20% in the mid-20s as well. And so we're getting a pretty consistent picture here of revenues for a lot of these industrial bellwethers growing north of 20%. And what's really remarkable about that, Eric, is the comparisons are really beginning to get difficult at this point. And the fact that we're seeing such rapid growth against these types of comparisons is it's certainly a good thing. I think investors are looking and sort of assuming that the revenues will be strong. They really should be. The macro data supports that. For instance, the stuff that we usually chat about, the PMI. To put the PMI into perspective, in the most recent month, it was a reading of 61.2, a very expansionary reading. In fact, if you look at the February and March PMI data, you'd have to go all the way back to December of 1983 to find readings that were higher than what we've seen in February and March on the PMI. That's a leading indicator. That tells you that the balance of 2011 should remain very strong for the industrial space. And, of course, this morning got industrial production. My measure of that was up about 50 basis points sequentially. But more importantly, it was up another 12.5% annually, again, against tougher comps at a part of the cycle where you're usually growing in the mid-single digits. I have to tell you, the top-line results, the demand environment remains very positive. So the reports, as you alluded to, have been very solid.
Well, I hope you're right with your observation there on the PMI. But let's keep things sober, and obviously price hikes across the board and other inflationary pressures are coming into play at this point. Can you comment on what you're seeing and hearing related to margins? Are we keeping up, or are you seeing those begin to slip a little bit?
So far, we've been keeping up, but again, we've mostly seen some of the distributors report. And I think for distributors, what we've always seen and experienced is that pricing tends to be a little bit easier to flow through. I should probably throw in the caveat that everyone throws out to me, which is that it's never easy to get it. But the reality is that distribution has an easier time getting pricing than perhaps the OE sector does, the manufacturers do. So we haven't seen a lot of the manufacturers report yet. That's going to be coming much more heavily in the next quarter or two. But I'll tell you, you're right. You are seeing price increases coming through very aggressively now. And one of my favorite current stories is Lincoln Electric, a manufacturer of welding equipment. They put through a price increase in February. We know they also put through another price increase in April, which was probably 2 or 3 times bigger than the February increase. And what that tells me, Eric, is if you have a company putting 2 price increases in such rapid succession, with the second one being bigger than the first one, that does tell you that companies are running harder and harder to try to keep up with rising raw materials. So the distributors have not seen a lot of pressure from rising prices at this point. However, I think as we start to see the manufacturers come through, they're going to talk a lot about pricing, but the underlying subtext there is that they're doing it to try to keep up with raw materials. And I think that we're still behind. So I think in Q1, to perhaps a lesser degree in Q2, you're going to see some margin pressure as a result of those price increases not yet being in to offset the raw materials and the fact that the raw materials keep going up. So I don't want our listeners to get hysterical over the price of raw materials. You know, there are certain categories of raw materials that, frankly, aren't even at the 2008 levels, the pre-Great Recession levels. They may get there, but what we're seeing here is not unprecedented. Companies were getting pricing before. They seem to be getting the pricing now. And if you can ever get some stability, I think you'll be able to get some margin power back. Because as of now, I've not seen any indication that the companies are not getting price increases through. So I think in the near term, we're going to have to gut out this period of catch-up, and hopefully at some point we'll see raw materials maybe stabilize. And if that happens, I don't think that there's any permanent impairment on the margins. But clearly that's one of the things we need to watch for in this cycle. And certainly your listeners need to be really close to this story as things play out in coming months.
Yeah, you're right about that. Our listeners have a very sharp eye on steel prices right now, and the story is still coming out on that. But let's shift gears for just a moment, since we're wrapping up the past quarter, and revisit a subject that was high in the headlines a few months ago. Are you hearing anything about the European debt crisis or seeing evidence that other EU countries may soon join the default list, kind of stirring things up again?
Yeah, it's a good question. And actually, Eric, before I move on to that, let me add one more thing to the pricing comment, which I should have mentioned earlier. You know, when Fastener reported earnings, one of the interesting things is, in contrast to a lot of other companies, Fastener at this point has not been that aggressive putting through pricing, you should know. However, and then they really cite certain carbon steel indices that they tend to track and follow, which really didn't begin to move until the January-February timeframe. But, you know, your listeners in the space should certainly be aware that even Fastener is even though they didn't talk about a lot of pricing in Q1, clearly the bias out of Fastener is also to be raising prices in upcoming quarters. So there's a direct industry participant that, you know, has given some color on that. So maybe a little bit delayed, but they're getting there as well. To your question about the European crisis, honestly, we haven't heard a whole lot more about it. It seems relatively invisible to my companies right now. Certainly we hear the headlines with, companies or countries needing bailouts and things of that sort, but bear in mind who these countries are. These countries are those that are not all that exposed or relevant to the industrial world. I've maintained, and I continue to maintain, I'm hearing nothing different, that Germany continues to be the breadbasket for the industrial world. It's the key to exports in Europe, and those exports are going significantly to the BRIC nations, that being Brazil, Russia, India, China, and those emerging nations. And I think that as long as those BRIC nations remain healthy, I think that keeps Germany up, and I think that keeps the European industrial world afloat. And I think that this whole austerity issue is something which is not going to be a dramatic problem. Now, I should then bring that conversation perhaps to what we're seeing in the emerging economies. Right now, there's no issues, but you would have to look around and see perhaps increasing inflationary pressures. If you look at the PMI for China, it's one of the weaker PMIs within the sort of global list of PMIs. And so certainly things are still growing over there. Companies are still saying that engine for growth is still chugging along quite nicely. But I think that, I'm less concerned about the European austerity issues at this point, and I'm more focused on what we're seeing in Asia. Certainly no problems with Asia and India and some of these growth markets at this point, but some stuff to watch for sure. I wouldn't say that looks like it's totally clear sailing at this point. There's some things to watch on the horizon.
And we'll be watching. Now, based on what you're seeing in the second quarter so far, what should Fully Threaded listeners be watching for in the weeks and months ahead, aside from that?
Well, I think that one of the things they should be looking for, which I think we talked about last time, is they should still be really getting into a growth mindset, because what we're seeing out of the macro data suggests that certainly through 2011 at least, we're going to continue to see good growth in the industrial world. But perhaps more importantly is if you talk to the big distributors that are out there, the big distributors are being more aggressive this cycle going after the small distributors' business than they ever have been before. And as a result, if the smaller distributor gets into the mindset that worried about the economy, we're going to be really cautious about this, we're not going to go out and add people to grow just in case we see a retrenchment, it's going to become increasingly difficult to compete with those larger players, because the larger players are absolutely investing in people, investing in stores, investing in inventory. And so I think that the main risk, after really what has been years of sort of shaky economics in the industrial world, the real risk right now is being too complacent for too long, because the larger distributors have sort of thrown off that yoke of history, of recent history. So that's certainly one thing that I would continue to emphasize. And then the other is they can't get complacent on pricing, on the price-cost dynamic either. Again, there may be a tendency to say, you know what, we're going to be cautious on this raising price thing. Customers don't like it. But again, the big competitors are raising prices. Grainger is getting some net price. MSC is certainly seeing pricing. Fastenal's prices on the come. We're hearing of companies like AIT raising prices. Price increases right now are the norm. The big distributors are not falling back and saying, we don't want to do this, our customers will be angry. They're raising prices. And so, the smaller distributors at the same time don't necessarily need to take a hit on margins. And so I think those are really the two issues that need to be looked at, that we need to be aware of where the bigger guys are going with that to understand what our relative competitive position is. But, right now I think that your listeners need to be considering that the environment is one of growth, considering that the environment is one of price increases and margin defense, and then recognizing that the larger distributors are there on those two issues.
Well, those are very important messages for Fully Threaded listeners, and thank you very much, Holden, for that analysis. And I'll remind you that Holden and his colleagues from BB&T Capital Markets publish a weekly news digest that's available to all FCH members, and the last several editions are archived for you on the welcome page as you log in, so check it out. It's well worth a read. Holden Lewis, thanks again for sharing your perspectives with us today. We really, really appreciate it.
Eric, it's been great talking to you and your listeners again, and I look forward to doing it the next time.
It's the time of year when the fastener industry begins thinking about taking some of the competition onto the golf course. And the Pacific West Fastener Association has its second annual Mel Kirshner Memorial Golf Outing coming up on May 6th. Here to talk about that with us is John Gaudette. He's the branch manager for metric and multi-standard components, and he's also the vice president of the Pac West Fastener Association. John, thanks for coming on with Fully Threaded.
Thank you, Art.
Hi, John.
Hey, Brian. Thank you for having me.
Been a while since you guys yucked it up, huh?
Yeah, it was at the Pac West meeting last year, actually. Good show, too. Even if I did get the teams wrong, okay?
The what wrong?
The teams, the softball teams, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if John was necessarily dialed into that. It was a little scandalous at the time, but
right.
we won't go into that right now. Speaking of scandals, John, recently on the show we had Pac West President Andy Cohn, and he was mentioning to us that for the spring meeting that you had recently in Seattle, he put the kibosh on the golfing for that event, and there was a little bit of grumbling about that. We didn't hear any follow-up. Did you take any flack for that as an officer?
We did not take any flack for that, and I'll tell you why. Because Seattle in March is not the place you really want to golf unless you live in Seattle.
Right, and have raincoats and things like that.
Yeah, well, though we did end up getting lucky. So if golf had been scheduled, we may have gotten a 4-hour sunny window to play in. We did have a few nice hours in Seattle, and we had a wonderful conference. So, and I think the conference was great without the golf. But we will bring golf back for Denver in September, and there is golf for next spring in either San Francisco or Monterey.
Wow, sounds like a couple of good venues.
Well, he was hinting that people might compensate by drinking to excess, but I didn't hear any stories to follow up on that, so I just wanted to check.
Well, maybe it's the same. What happens in Seattle stays in Seattle.
Exactly. I did not see anybody drink any more than, let's say, than the average drinker on a Saturday night.
Okay.
Very well put. Hey, well, it sounded like a great event. We got the roundup on that from the last episode. What are you seeing these days in the market? How are you seeing things from your perspective?
Just the metric market, I think, along with the inch market, you'll see in the same increases with the product, just with the increase in steel. That's the biggest problem we're all facing. In the spring conference, we had Bruce Darling and Tim Roberto up there talking about the price of the steel, and it was, a lot of great information. And, it was soon after the tsunami in Japan, and they're kind of talking about some of the lasting effects that might happen. And some of these steel houses in Japan have been affected, and it's going to affect the output of steel, especially in the high alloy steel, what you use for your stronger bolts. A lot of that still comes from Japan. So we have the same problems, with the long lead times, and that's probably the biggest challenge is, keeping the supply flowing. The market for metric is still, I'd say, it's a roller coaster. It's up and down, and I think you kind of see how it goes with the value of the dollar, and how expensive the parts are to bring in, and also in how people can export their finished product that the nuts and bolts go into. So it's definitely rebounding. I mean, the market, you see it's been climbing, but it's not a straight line climb. It's it's more of a wave that we're riding up with some peaks and some crests.
Right. Well, we're hearing a lot of that these days. That's for sure.
So I suppose, John, relative to, the last episode we had dealt with, I guess, sourcing in the US or manufacturing in the US, and in the world of metrics, I suppose you really can't get anything metric manufactured in the US if you tried, could you? I mean, it's...
No, that's not true. If you have domestic requirements on metric parts, there's domestic manufacturers which will do short runs for us. That's never a problem. And then there are, Nucor does have a metric line. They do make metric parts. They make them to the ISO standard generally, but they do make to the DIN standard. They're capable of doing it, and they make a quality product. So no, metric parts made in the U.S. are definitely accessible.
How long has that been the case?
How long has what been the case, Eric?
That you can Yeah, that you could get manufactured in metric in the US.
You don't find it on the shelf. So you're not going to call up and you're not going to find domestic made metric parts on the shelf, except for Nucor parts through Nucor houses, which we're not. I mean, we do buy a little bit from Nucor, but we're not a Nucor house. But you can, if you have a domestic requirement and you have time for manufacturing, you can definitely have it made. We have capabilities with some manufacturers that have to get it made.
Huh.
It's always been the case.
Okay. Where does the steel come from then? You mean with a different?
It's the same. When they pull a wire, they pull, because bolts are made from wire. So a lot of the same wire that can be used to make a 1/4-inch bolt can be used to make a 6mm bolt. A 5/16 bolt, you'd make the 8mm. The 3/8 is the 10mm. So they're used generally the same wire. That's not generally an issue. The only issues that you'd have with the metric parts would be the same that you'd find with, domestic parts when you have some really exotic material that is just hard to locate or really expensive, and then you'd have the same problems with the metric.
Yeah, that and the lengths are all measured in inches, Bry. That's the other difference.
Oh, okay. I forgot that. Right. No, I was thinking, say, of the grade, say, 10.9s or 12.9 steels, say, the more exotic.
Well, you can, when you look at the grade 10.9, you have requirements on the wire. So there isn't just one wire that has to be made for 10.9. As long as the chemicals meet the requirements for 10.9, then you can make a 10.9 bolt out of it. Yeah. And it's really as long as the chemicals in the wire match. And it all depends upon the requirement on the product too. Does the wire need to be made in the U.S. Or does it, or can you use imported wire?
Right.
So it really all depends upon the requirements all the way down to your contract.
Oh, okay. Well, that's sort of interesting. Okay. I hadn't really thought of that, so I guess you learn something every day.
Let's talk about golf, guys.
John's been waiting to talk about golf since we started.
No, I'll talk about anything. I'll talk about anything.
We've got the second annual Mel Kirshner Memorial Golf Outing coming up on Friday, May 6th, and that's happening at the Westbridge Golf Club in La Habra, California. Last year, the event was won by Team Porteous. What do we got lined up for this year's event, John?
I think there's a couple of teams that are going to give Team Porteous a run for their money this year. So we need to get a few more out there to make sure we can knock Team Porteous off the horse. And I just want to point out the fact that these guys must, be spending way too much time playing golf. If he comes in early in the year ready to win a tournament, but I think there's a couple of teams out there that can give us a chance. What's more important about this tournament is that it is our sole fundraiser for our scholarship fund, past individual donations that people may make or companies may make. And, Mel Kirshner was a really integral part of our industry in California and the West Coast. He had companies in both California and Nevada. He founded the Fastener Museum, which tragically burnt to the ground in 2003 in those big wildfires down by San Diego. Anybody who lived down there remembers that. It's just horrible. Those fires were tremendous. But Mel's family's involved. His widow and his son were both there last year. And there is some plan to try to get this museum going back up again. But the scholarship is what it's all about for the people who are there, and to be able to help fund education. And it's not just for students. It's also for people continuing. We also offer our scholarship for training, and specifically fastener training. It is available for people, in the industry, and for their children for, traditional school and colleges. So.
Well, there's no question it's a worthwhile event, and there are a couple of side contests that are going on. I know there's a hole-in-one contest that's being sponsored by ND Industries. Also, I saw that Metric and Multistandard's Components has donated an iPad, and so that's something you'll want to get in on if you can.
Well, The iPad is kind of locked up. That was to spur people on to register early, so we had 18 people registered to win that iPad. So.
Wow. So you wouldn't consider giving it to one of the fully threaded people just as a matter of generosity or something like that? I mean, I wouldn't mind.
We maybe it's a healthy donation to our scholarship fund. That might.
Yeah, come on, Brian. Can't you take a hint?
Sorry. Right.
Actually, now that you bring it up, John, we're sponsoring a hole, and I'm hoping that you can get Vicki Lester out there on the course for a couple of photos for the Facebook page.
Vicki is pretty good about staying behind the camera, but we'll try to get her in front of the camera this time and get some pictures for her page. That hole-in-one contest too. That's in honor of you, Martin, and that's he passed away last year, and a lot of people really loved you as well. And Tim Marzano from Indie Industries really thought this was a great way to put this out there. You was always a big part of our association down in Southern California. He was the guy who'd come in, he'd buy 100 raffle tickets just to make sure he'd win a prize, and because he also thought it was really important to fund this, education and any charities. You as a guy who liked to give back a lot, so I think it's really great that the Indie Industries has stepped up to the plate and offered up a new car, just to knock the ball in the hole. It's a simple chore. Just get out there and do it.
Yeah, it may be simple for you, mate. Okay. How many teams have you got playing in the tournament then?
So far we have. So far, we have 8 teams registered. We have 2 weeks left to register for the event. The early deadline for early registration is Monday. So if you register today or Monday to get the break on the price for registering. But if you don't get the break, remember that all the proceeds, and that is all the proceeds of this event, go to our scholarship fund. So it's not like it's wasted money. It's so register right up to the day of the event, and we'll make room for you on the course. And I think there's a couple of guys that both know pretty well are playing. It's the Truckies.
I was going to ask you about Joe and his brother. Yeah, good.
The Truckies have put together a little team, and I'm sure they love to knock the Porteouses off the top.
I think so.
All right, it's good to hear some big guns are going to be out there on the course. Now, are you much of a golfer yourself, John?
I'll swing the club here and there. I'm kind of a one-trick pony. I can hit the ball a long way. Getting it into the cup ends up being my downfall.
Well, it's good to have one trick, though. It's better than none, right?
Right. Yeah, when it comes to golf, I'm a no-trick pony, okay? I have played it a few times, but it was complete lack of consistency that drove me crazy.
That's because you have to play it more than a few times.
Right, I know. So you choose the things you're going to be good at. So do you have some good courses around in Reno?
Well, yeah, Reno has some nice courses. The only problem is our weather here is not really been conducive for practice, so I'm going to be coming in probably a little stiff that Friday morning, but I'm sure I'll loosen up pretty quick.
Yeah, you're sort of preparing the way with excuses before the tournament starts?
Oh, I don't need excuses. We're going to knock the Porteouses right off.
Right. Okay.
Well, whether you have one trick, no tricks, or a lot of tricks, it's a great event, and you can see details about it at the website, www.pac-west.org. That's the Pacific West Fastener Association website. And I hope everybody gets out there if you're within shooting distance. Hey, John, while we have you on, you've got a couple other events coming up with the association. Anything you'd care to share?
We do. On June 28th, we have a dinner meeting down in Southern California, and it'll be talking about the state of the industry and the state of imports, and also the prices of wire. So it's really stuff to be tuned into. If you're in the fastener industry, it'll be a lot of information that you need to protect yourself and your business.
Well, you guys do a great job in everything you do. And once again, more details on that will be found at the website. That's www.pac-west.org. And John, we sure do appreciate you joining us. Good luck out there on the links coming up on May 6th.
Thank you very much, Eric, and thanks for having me on.
It's our pleasure. Maybe you can schedule a very quick afternoon off to do some practice.
As soon as the wind stops blowing out here, and I think I might just have to do that. Thank you, Brian.
Okay, mateys. Look forward to seeing you again, okay?
Okay, thanks.
John Gaudette, Metric and Multistandard. Mr. Jim Derry, up next on FTR.
Fastener Tech 11 is the all-fastener industry event in the heart of the fastener industry. This is Nancy Rich, Executive Director of the Midwest Fastener Association, and on behalf of the Midwest Fastener Association and Fastener Technology International Magazine, I'd like to invite you to Rosemont, Illinois, June 13th through the 15th, to attend Fastener Tech 11. This year marks the 30th fastener show the Midwest Fastener Association has produced. This year's Fastener Tech features seminars, meetings, and activities, including the premier trade exhibition in the Midwest. This event will also include the all-industry reception, which is open to all exhibitors and attendees. Also this year, Fastener Tech will take place alongside Surfin', the annual trade show of the National Association for Surface Finishing, which offers free admission to Fastener Tech attendees. For details and registration information, please visit www.mwfa.net or www.fastenertech.com. If you attend only one industry event this year, make it Fastener Tech 11 in the heart of the fastener industry.
Hi, this is Heidi Voltrauer inviting you to the All-American Fastener Show in Branson, Missouri, May 12th through the 13th. For details, go to allamericanfastenershow.com. You're listening to Fully Threaded Radio.
Jim Derry is the general manager at Field Fastener, and they operate out of Rockford, Illinois. He was the president of the NFDA up until last week's spring meeting when he handed the torch off to Matt Ulrich. Jim has graciously joined us a couple of times before, and we thought we'd invite him back to reflect on his year as skipper of the NFDA. Thanks for being with us again, Jim.
It's great to be here. It's always fun. Thank you for having me.
Hey, you're fresh back from the NFDA spring meeting. How did it go this year? What was the theme? What were the highlights?
It was a great meeting overall. I think the highlights were a fantastic venue, and the weather was perfect, and it's a championship caliber golf course, so that always makes for a good meeting. But the NFDA staff put together a lot of effort to try to come up with a program that really would be beneficial to the members, and we got some great feedback about the content of the meeting. We had a powerful discussion about the economy with Alan Beaulieu. He's an incredible speaker for an economist. He's witty and had some great insights about what's going on in the economy. And we've used his company's services over the last several years, and they tend to be just spot on, accurate when it comes to kind of predicting what's going to happen in the future. So he had some really good insights, the kind of information that you can use when you're running your business. So it's good insights to say, well, it's now a good time to hunker down and save money, or is now a good time to expand, that kind of thing. And he's been right on, and he was basically saying now is a great time to go expand your business, borrow money, work on efficiency, improve your organization, expand your capacity. made some very specific recommendations for our industry right now based on the economic cycle we're in now. So that was great, and powerful speaker on exporting and some good insights on healthcare, and a really interesting best practice sessions where member companies were sharing kind of what they're doing in specific areas on lean and logistics and compensation strategy. So it's a session where you can really get some good insights from your peers in the industry and walk away with stuff that you can go back and on Monday start looking into and start potentially making some changes. So I personally thought it was good, and we got a lot of feedback that the content of the meeting was good, and the networking stuff, networking sessions were a lot of fun. So all in all, it was a great meeting. It worked out good, and I think everybody that was there enjoyed it and had a good time.
There's a lot of optimism out there right now, and was that pretty much shared by all the attendees? I mean, what was the buzz?
It sure was. I think, Alan had some specific feedback and data about what the economy has done over the last several years, and certainly, from his data would suggest the economy is getting better. But everyone I talked to was certainly optimistic about how business was how last year finished, what was going on this year, kind of the overall outlook. I think the overall underlying theme of the people that I spoke to was that business is good. This would be a great year. Next year would be another good year. So I think there's a lot of optimism throughout the industry, and that's fun to hear. Actually, and some of the folks that I talked to about attending the meeting, they indicated that they couldn't attend because they were too busy and couldn't break away from work to go to a conference. So I think all in all, there's a lot of optimism about what's going on in the fastener industry today.
Yeah, that's quite a change from the last couple of years. Well, I'm curious, did he address at all one of the big issues that is kind of offsetting some of the optimism? And that, of course, is the big public debate right now about the deficit spending that's going on and the possible monetary problem that we're having. I'm curious, did he address that at all as kind of an offset to all the optimism, or how did that play out?
Yeah, he did touch on it briefly, kind of acknowledge that it's an issue and it's a factor and something's it's going to have a big impact, but in the short term, didn't really see that as a big deal. I mean, if you get out 5 years or so, that's when he had some kind of interesting insights about what might happen when if these issues aren't resolved here in the next several years. Obviously, our country can't continue spending the money at the rate it is today. I mean, that just doesn't. That's going to be a problem long term. But he kind of saw that as a longer term problem as opposed to something that would affect the economy more in the short term. I tend to agree with him. I mean, I don't think that really changes a lot of things this year or next year. But we have to do something, or that's going to have a much bigger impact on the economy long term.
Absolutely. Well, let's talk about the organization for a minute. When we talked to you last time, actually it was about a year ago now, hard to believe, we discussed some of the ambitious plans that you and the board had set out for NFDA. What do you figure were your greatest areas of success? How did they kind of unfold over the year, Jim?
Well, we put together a strategic plan that had really three main issues, and part of what we needed to do in the plan is to stop doing stuff that wasn't strategic and wasn't important, and we really focused on membership return on investment in the NFDA, globalization, and alliances. And I think in the globalization front, we had really a very successful endeavor in a trade mission to the Stuttgart Fastener Show. There were several NFDA member companies that attended. We had meeting space, and really a lot of people got a lot of benefit out of participating in that show, and in the group environment worked out well. And I think the focus of the NFDA and our globalization committee really is to try to help members expand their business globally. Initially, I think when the NFDA talked about globalization, I think there was an assumption that our whole orientation for globalization was doing business in Asia and buying products from Asian companies and having Asian members. Well, the reality of what's really played out is that our globalization efforts have all been directed towards expanding companies' businesses, exporting and doing business more globally as opposed to buying more from Asian countries. Case in point, one of our speakers at the meeting was somebody that actually worked for our government and helping companies export and do more business internationally. So I think we've made good strides forward in our globalization efforts. In the areas of alliances, I think We have really reached out significantly to other fastener associations. I've attended a PAC West meeting with our executive director, Mark Leonard, and so we really reached out to other people in the industry to try to expand the cooperation and collaboration within the industry. And a recent event has been an agreement in principle for the Southeast Fastener Association and the NFDA to kind of work together in an alliance. There's a task force that's being created to work out the details, but both the boards of both organizations have agreed that we will work on an alliance to try to work closer together. And I think what will ultimately end up being is the NFDA organization will take over the day-to-day operations and collecting dues and communicating to members and all the kind of the back office stuff for the Southeast Fastener Association. And we'll do that for a while, and if things play out well, we may bring the organizations closer together. It's really kind of like we've agreed to date. So we think that's really interesting, and we have actually had communication with several other fastener associations, the regional fastener associations in the country, to discuss similar kinds of relationships. The bottom line is there's way too much fragmentation and duplication of fastener associations in the industry, and we're kind of try to work together with some of the regionals to come up with a more, I'd say, inclusive one organization that would serve anybody that's in the fastener industry in the United States. So we're really excited about where that's headed. And one of the other significant things that happened this year, we brought Mark Leonard into the organization as our new executive director. He brings a ton of energy and passion and a real strong marketing background, and he's been a real positive impact on the NFDA and kind of how we're going to market. And he's really updated all our marketing materials and marketing collateral, and he's done a great job. He hit the ground running, and he's been a great addition to the NFDA. So I'd say we've had a pretty busy last year. There's lots more communication to our members. We've gone to updated our communication and newsletters, and there's a lot more content and a lot more what's going on in the industry. So it's been a busy year. It's hard to imagine that this last year is already behind us.
It went by in a flash.
It sure did. Yeah, it seemed like we just started this, and the year's up. So it's been a wild ride.
Well, let me return for a moment to the issue of globalization, because that was, of course, one of the major planks of the plan that you and the board put together. And there were a few ruffled feathers at the beginning of the year, and I'm just curious, how did that happen? I mean, that was a pretty big challenge for you during your tenure, wasn't it?
It was actually, the issue had been something that we wrestled with on the board for several years, and it boiled down to, does it make sense for the NFDA to open up opportunities for Asian companies to be members? We've always allowed European companies to be members, both SARD and Worth, and those are European companies that have presence in the United States. So when we made the decision to allow Asian members to join, it really, we thought, was really important for the long term. Really, I think it was based on the fact of recognizing that we operate in a global economy, in a global industry. But there were several members that were just not happy with that decision at all, and several of them voiced their opinion by dropping out of the organization, and that was disheartening. We hated to see anybody go, and there were a year or so ago we recruited several Asian members into the NFDA, and as of right now, none of them have renewed their membership for this year. So I was an active, aggressive supporter of this decision, but I'm not sure if it really worked out, because today we don't have any Asian members, and so it really hasn't grown the membership the way we had anticipated. So we addressed that at the board meeting, and there was no decision made to change anything, but I think that issue certainly needs to be continued to be evaluated and reviewed and discussed in the future, because it certainly didn't work out the way we had intended. But right now the jury's still out on it. But I think the thing that has significantly changed about the globalization is the focus of the NFDA in globalization is exporting business, not recruiting Asian members. I mean, we spent a lot of time in globalization talking about helping member companies do business in other parts of the world. That's globalization. Asian sourcing is also one small piece of it, but there's a much bigger opportunity for our members to expand their businesses globally than to buy stuff from Asia, because most of our members, candidly, they buy product from Asia today. So it's not really that big of a deal. The fact that there were a handful of Asian members that joined the NFDA, and I didn't really see it as a big deal one way or another, but some folks that weren't supportive of it, have left. And so I think ultimately this issue may prove to just kind of go away.
Well, that's all part of leadership, isn't it? You have to try things, and occasionally they don't pan out the way that you anticipated.
Yeah, and I think part of it was just people's perception. When we talk about globalization, I think too many people just assumed our focus was going to be all on Asia. And the reality is it hasn't been that. It's been, as I described earlier, it's been way more effort and energy, and meeting content has been focused on helping customers export globally as opposed to import. So I think part of it was people just perceived our direction differently than what the board had intended.
Right. Well, let's turn the subject for a moment to Field Fastener. That's your baby, and word is you're building onto your facility at Field, and it's a pretty major project. How's that progressing, Jim?
Eric, it's really an exciting time for us at Field. As you mentioned, we're adding a 43,000 square foot to our facility, so it's bigger than what we have today, and business is booming. Last month was the best month we ever had, and last year we were up 20%. We expect to be up again over 20% this year. So things are really humming along, and the addition is going to be a really fun thing for the company. We're doing the typical stuff, adding into the office and the warehouse, but we're doing some things to really enhance the culture of our company. We really believe in teamwork and the power of teams, so we're doing some things to try to facilitate that and enhance that with kind of flexible and comfortable meeting spaces. There's going to be a kind of a great room with a kind of a team member place to kick back and play video games or ping pong or pool or sit by the fireplace or something like that. There'll be a workout facility in the addition. Really, we're just trying to make it a place that will help us attract and retain the best talent. So we're really excited about what it will do for the feel of the building. There'll be a real high-tech feel to it, a lot of use of computers and those kinds of things. And there's been a ton of effort that's gone into the planning of the warehouse. We worked with several lean consultants to kind of lay out the building and then lay out the material handling systems and optimize the workflow. Our goal is to have the most efficient distribution facility in the fastener industry. So we're really working hard to automate processes and design the facility with all the lean principles in mind, so that when we're done, we end up with a very, very efficient operation. So it's exciting. Actually, the groundbreaking is tomorrow, and we will be in the new facility in October. So the construction crews they're going fast and furious, so it's really fun. It's an exciting time.
Well, that sounds really exciting, and you're putting your money where your mouth is regarding this whole optimism that's was generated at the meeting, and that's really, really good to see, Jim.
Well, it was interesting at the NFDA meeting, Alan Beaulieu, I mentioned, the economist, he had some very specific action steps. He said, you should be doing this, this, and this, and my business partner and I, Bill, looked at each other and said, well, that's what we're doing. I mean, this whole addition for us is building capacity, it's building efficiency, it's doing all the right things now to really support the growth, because the next several years will be a really strong growth cycle in the economy. So we want to position ourselves to be able to be a part of that. That's great. And then last Friday we got to sign a new $2.5 million customer, and so there's plenty to do around Field Fastener these days.
That sounds good. I always thought that ex-presidents spent most of their time golfing, but it sounds like you have other plans.
I'm a terrible. If you saw my golfing, you know that's not part of my deal. No hope for that. But I am going to be a part of as the ex-president. There's not a real defined role. It's really just to kind of be another set of eyes and ears, and just to provide some insights, and just, hey, maybe in the past we did some of these things. But there's a more specific role this year in the as I alluded to earlier, this relationship with the Southeast Fastener Association, I'm going to lead a task force of people from the NFDA to work with the Southeast Association to kind of hammer out some of the details. So that's a project that I'm going to stay involved in. It's hard to completely back away from this kind of stuff. NFDA has been great for our company for 15 years or so, and it was a real honor to serve as a president. And you meet some great people and have some fun. And in any organization, or really any relationship, you get out of that organization relationship what you put into it. So it's been a positive thing. So I'm gonna keep my fingers in a couple little things here, but certainly not to the level that was required as president.
Well, we have a pretty good relationship with the new president, Matt Ulrich, and you don't expect that he's going to be walking around blaming a lot of these current developments on the previous administration like we hear so much in politics, do you?
I don't think he'll do that. We've had a great working relationship, and even more importantly, our field has become a pretty good customer of his company. So he starts getting lippy with me. We'll have to take our packaging business someplace else.
I think you're pretty safe.
Yeah. No, he'll do a great job. He's a great young man. He's got some fresh insights and outlook. He's got an interesting background. He'll do a great job. He will, and the board right now is strong. There's some really committed folks on it with again good, different, diverse backgrounds. So we're excited. And Jay Queen was elected as the vice president, so he'll be a great addition to the executive committee, and he'll do a great job in his role in his term as president as well. So I think the NFDA is in good hands.
Well, it sure sounds that way, and I hope you won't make yourself a stranger. You're always welcome to join us here on Fully Threaded, and boy, we sure do thank you again and wish you the best of luck with your build-out over there at Field.
Oh, I appreciate that. We'll have to include you in the grand opening. We're going to have we're always looking for a reason to have a party. We'll have some celebration in October, November. We'll make sure to include you for that.
We'll be there. Thanks again, Jim.
All right, nice talking to you, Eric.
The clock is ticking down, but there's more Fully Threaded straight ahead.
This is Sue Rice with the FCH team. It's my job to make sure that as an FCH member, you receive the highest possible benefit from your participation in the network. Did you know that once you're logged into FCH, you have access to exclusive search tools, site statistics, and tracking information about your inventory and source finder inquiries? It's all just a click away, and I'm happy to walk you through it. If it's time to refresh your inventory, don't worry. We'll run your listings through our scrubber software and get you up and running in a very short time. If you can attach a spreadsheet to an email, you can list inventory on FCH. We can also show you how to optimize your listings to attract the most hits for your type of fastener. Send email to Sue at fastenersclearinghouse.com and let me help you get the most from the FCH sourcing network. I look forward to hearing from you soon.
Hi, this is Hugh Hewitt for the Injured Marine Semper Fi Fund, www.semperfifund.org. Over the past 7 years, twice a year, the wonderful people who operate the Semper Fi Fund and many amazing Marines who have been the beneficiaries of the charities that have supported the Semper Fi Fund, including many thousands of individual donors, have come into my radio studio to tell their amazing stories of serving their country, of being wounded, and how the Semper Fi Fund has helped them make that transition back to recovery. Unfortunately, Bethesda and Walter Reed are full again. More and more men and women are coming back from the war injured, sometimes awfully so. We need the Semper Fi Fund to be there for these Marines and those soldiers, sailors, and airmen who served alongside of them. Please consider a gift to the Semper Fi Fund. Very low overhead, extraordinary capacity to get money where it needs to get in a hurry, and great management, including some of the senior Marines who've ever served under the flag. When you're looking for something to do that will make an impact, please check out the Semper Fi Fund. That's www.semperfifund.org, www.semperfifund.org.
This is Chris Sellery from Ford Fasteners. your source for 410 stainless steel screws. You're listening to Fully Threaded Radio.
Brian and Eric, back with you at the online Fastener Fandango.
Thinking about the movie about Atlas Shrugged.
Well, I haven't seen it yet.
No, I haven't either. Hopefully I'll hope to see it the next few days.
Yeah, I'm actually going out to Arizona to meet up with some family, and we're planning on all going to see that together.
Yeah, you know, it's sort of had some interesting reviews, and a lot of them have been rather poor, but then again, it could be that the people reviewing them wanted it to be poor, okay? And it's probably not a movie that would appeal to a wide part of the public. I don't think its message is quite in line with what's going on at the moment. It's very appropriate, but not with our current government, I wouldn't think.
Oh, absolutely. You're 100% right there, Bri. That's a message that has never been widely embraced by a huge percentage of the population, and certainly not the political ruling class types, that's for sure.
Yeah, well, and that's exactly how the book deals with it, isn't it? I mean, the way that the political people deal with the industrialists is really, really, really tough and arrogant.
Yeah, I was thinking while we were listening to Jim Derry talking about the build-out that he's doing with Field Fasteners, and then earlier in the show, Mike McNulty was mentioning that he had been working with the state of Illinois to get some allowances. Apparently, some state legislators from California recently made a junket out to Texas, and they did so for a fact-finding mission. They were trying to find out why all these businesses were leaving California and going to Texas, and as if that wasn't obvious enough. And Illinois, I got to say, it's probably nearly as bad as California in some ways for being unfriendly to business. So,
oh yeah, I mean, you think, why would anyone need to go to Texas to understand what the difference is between Texas administration and California administration? I mean, that's the fact that the government tries to stay out of it is what's really separated Texas, probably for its almost entire history, as part of either a republic or part of the U.S.
Right. Well, it's another one of these bewildering issues, much like the deficit spending issue, that we just can't understand. Why isn't it being resolved? Why isn't it being addressed logically, or at least what we would consider to be logic? I don't know. But apparently in the case of Field Fastener, they were able to come to an accord, and I'm glad it's working out for them. I think it's working out for everybody in that case. So
that's good. So Jim's really put a whole heap of work in front of himself to make up for the work he's just shoveled off.
I'm sure that's all too obvious. Well, why don't we take a moment to thank our guests, and they were of Metric and Multistandard, John Gaudette, also Jim Derry of Field Fastener, Holden Lewis of BB&T Capital Markets, and of course Mike McNulty of Fastener Technology International magazine.
And we know, of course, that John Gaudette is hoping that he's going to be on one of the teams that unseats the Porteous team.
Yes, he made that abundantly clear, so we're going to be watching.
Yeah.
The entire fully threaded community, I think, is going to be paying attention to that one.
And they won't have me there to get the teams wrong, okay?
And if you hear anything about that, folks, why don't you let us know? Email us anytime at the email address ftr@fullythreaded.com. If we hear anything, we'll shoot it your way, either on our Facebook page or through Twitter under the handle Fully Threaded. Also, we don't mention this often enough anymore, but you're always welcome to subscribe to Fully Threaded Radio through iTunes. You can also subscribe if you're a BlackBerry user, and more people seem to be listening to the show on their mobile devices, so we very much appreciate that. Get the word out there, folks. We appreciate that as well.
Yeah, I guess in the light of Apple releasing the fact they sold, 30 million iPhones in the last quarter, there's going to be plenty of you out there who could subscribe.
Yeah, talk about a wild success.
Yeah, for something that was never meant to actually work properly, and the first version of which was so panned by the tech analysts and tech reporters.
Right. Well, how could it ever overtake the Palm Pilot, Brian? Come on.
Yeah, I know.
Really?
Or the Abacus, okay.
Oh, man. Now, the problem is some guys in the fastener industry, the older ones, are probably nodding in agreement. Although, yeah. I guess those are the guys that really probably aren't listening, so I think we're safe.
Right.
Hey, but, speaking of the whole iPad thing, man, in the headlines, this whole geocode tracking application and the stored data that came out, this has really, really made big news. What do you make of all this?
Well, it's I would think it's probably some hidden bit of code that Apple's had sitting there on the basis that they could probably sell, movement information about its users. I'd also quickly point out that they've now announced that exactly the same tracking mechanism is built into Android phones, okay? So it's possibly all of the phones that have GPS units in them. Though, I heard one report that possibly the reason for building this tracking and storage mechanism in was so it could remember information really about which cell towers were, the ones that it got its best signal from. That's only what I heard, okay?
Well, I'm sure there's several possible uses for that type of data. I mean, the smart applications, the location-sensitive applications, they can all make good use of that. And if you're a creative entrepreneur, there's no end to the use you could put that stuff to. Problem is, now that it's widely known and there's these applications that can crunch that data and use it and put it out there, I mean, it's out there.
Yeah, I mean, clearly it was a big screw-up that it was done and then it got found out, okay?
You're saying transparency's a bad thing?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I'm looking for my job in Washington, okay?
Well, the thing that bothers me is now I have every reason to believe that they know where I've been hiding my gold bars.
Hey, I want to know that too.
Yeah, well, don't worry. They got an app for that.
Good.
And that's going to put episode 24 in the can.
Yeah, and Apple knows exactly where that can is. And is tracking it as we speak.
For Brian Musker, this is Eric Dudas. Thanks for listening, everyone, and we'll talk to you next time.
Fully Threaded Radio is a production of Fastener's Clearinghouse. Music provided by Audionautics.
I can't think of anything else to say at the moment, okay?